All right, good morning, everyone. It's just a little bit after 10 a.m., so I'm gonna give people a couple more seconds to filter in before I get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining and spending your Martin Luther King Jr. Day with us. Welcome to our second annual Field Inclusive Week. We are excited for you to meet our panelists momentarily. My name is Kayla Stukes. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a current PhD student at North Carolina State University, pursuing my degree in forestry. I am also the executive assistant at Field Inclusive, a young nonprofit working towards amplifying and supporting marginalized and historically excluded biologists and researchers who professionally work in the outdoors. Just so you're aware, today's webinar will be recorded and recordings will be posted to our YouTube channel throughout the week, so be sure to follow us there for easy access to these recordings. Shortly, I will introduce our panelists, but first, I would like to give a special thanks to our sponsor of Field Inclusive Week 2024, the Nature Conservancy. Thank you for coming on board as our sponsor for the second year and for being dedicated to promoting and supporting a more inclusive outdoors. It is through organizations like yours and the many individuals who donate to support Field Inclusive's mission that we can continue our goals in raising awareness when it comes to social field safety issues by hosting events like Field Inclusive Week, as well as providing financial support to marginalized and historically excluded individuals who professionally work outdoors. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Panelists, as I introduce each one of you, please feel free to turn on your cameras. Derek McFarland Jr. is a third-year PhD student in the University of Illinois' Ecology, Evolution, and Conservation Biology program, who studies the impact of human-mediated landscape change on human tick-borne disease risks across the St. Louis metropolitan area and over time. He was one of the Field Inclusive recipients of the 2023 Field Inclusive Research Grant. Majo Mendez is an Ecuadorian biologist and a PhD student at UC Berkeley, whose research is focused on the origin and evolution of chemical defenses in one of the most endangered groups of vertebrates, the harlequin toads. She was also one of Field Inclusive's recipients of the 2023 FI Research Grant. Sofia Correa is an undergraduate student in Wingate University's Environmental Biology program. She was the recipient of FI's 2023 Joint Fellowship from Field Inclusive and Cape Fear Bird Observatory, where she helped with painted bunting banding on public and private properties, as well as helped establish a point count and banding study on 6 sites from Wilmington to Sunset Beach. Jayshaun Talbert is an undergraduate student at Oregon State University. As he looks to the future, he is driven to extend the expertise into the captivating field of owl research. Continuing his journey towards a deeper understanding of these majestic creatures and their vital role in our ecosystems, Talbert was the recipient of Field Inclusive's 2023 Fall Travel Award, sponsored by Wilson Ornithological Society. A huge welcome and special thanks to all of our panelists today for agreeing to share their time and experiences with our audience members. Audience members, please feel free to submit questions for our panelists for the question and answer portion, which will be towards the end of our discussion today. Now, without further ado, I will pass it off to our first speaker, Derek. Then we will hear from Majo, Sofia, Jayshaun. So panelists, if you are not speaking, we ask that you go ahead and turn off your cameras until it is your turn. We will continue until everyone has gone, and then I will ask you all to turn your cameras back on as we all join together towards the end for our Q&A portion. And again, just to reiterate for our audience members, as you listen to the conversation, we invite you to please place your questions in the Q&A section of the webinar for our panelists to answer during the Q&A portion. All right, without further ado, take it away, Derek.
All right, thank you so much, Kayla. It's nice to be here. Thank you again for the invitation. I'm so excited to share my story and help add some value to the audience members and attendants. Yeah, my name is Derek McFarland. I am a fourth-year PhD student at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And this is just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in East St. Louis, Illinois. And I got my bachelor's in biology from Harris-Stowe State University in 2020. It's an HBCU in the St. Louis area. And I am, again, now a PhD candidate. Fourth year, Ecology, Evolution, and Conservation Biology is my program. at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and my research interests are broadly in vector-borne disease ecology, specifically tick-borne disease ecology, wildlife and ecosystem health, and conservation biology. My hobbies and interests outside of academia include running, which is my latest obsession, and hiking has always been just like a very steadfast way for me to connect with myself and with nature again. And those research interests really came from my undergrad research experiences. I feel like I wanted to be a veterinarian for most of my life just because I love nature and animals. And I thought that being a veterinarian was really the only way for me to entertain that passion. But it was through these undergraduate research experiences that I discovered that I could connect with nature and animals in a way that went beyond just like a clinical setting, right? And yeah, this was my first research experience in undergrad. It was in the summer of 2018, which was right before my junior year of college. And I had applied for the St. Louis University's McNair Scholars Program, the Ronald A. McNair Scholars Program. Some of you might have heard of it. It's a program that's geared towards helping underrepresented and marginalized students gain access to graduate programs through research and graduate school preparatory programming. And also Tyson Research Center has this fellowship program called Tyson Undergraduate Research Fellowship that also brings students out into a field station and helps and allows them to do research paired with a mentor. And this was my first research project titled The Prevalence of Babesia species parasites, which are bloodborne parasites that are transmitted to humans and animals by way of tick vectors. And I was looking at the Carolina wren specifically as a host for ticks in this bloodborne pathogen. And so we used mist nets every morning, caught these Carolina wrens, and also looked for ticks. As you can see, like by this red circle, those are ticks that are kind of like feeding on the head of this small bird. And we also blood let them. So we took blood samples from each of the birds, made blood slides, and then I looked at the blood cells underneath the microscope to find these parasites. Um, this was my first project. I didn't find any parasites at all. And so it was kind of like a womp, womp, womp. But I was able to look at the data still that we had gathered, and we found that Carolina wren were more prevalently tick hosts across each tick life stage. And so that kind of prompted more questions inside of me about how this bird that is so heavily tick burdened compared to its counterparts is doesn't have any bloodborne parasites inside of its blood. So what about its immunology and its kind of refractory to these tick-borne parasites made it not host any bloodborne parasites. It was really interesting. And now I'm actually preparing a draft manuscript for this work for the Journal of Medical Entomology and working towards that. And so this project really hit home for me why research was important, and I definitely wanted to pursue it more. And my second research experience in undergrad was this in 2019, where I was in the Washington University in St. Louis School of Medicine, and also through LSAMP. Some of you might have heard of that one as well, where I was looking at the prevalence of these other tick-borne pathogens called Bourbon and Heartland virus and field collected ticks around this same field station. And so we collected a bunch of ticks. These are a bunch of Lone Star ticks that are underneath the microscope here. And I kind of just crushed them and looked for the viruses within their blood, within the tick samples. And we actually did find a lot of uh, evidence of the virus within those ticks. And so that was my first time actually finding positive results within my data. And it was great to present that research all over the country later on in that year. The next year wasn't so great because I started grad school in 2020. And so after applying, I actually received, I published this paper later. That was great. But actually got a couple tick cakes in my honor because I published this paper and also got into grad school within the same week. And so it was pretty cool to see that I kind of like really got into ticks and people knew about it. Yeah, that's just like a little fun fact, I guess. Other than that, my graduate research kind of launched off of what my interests in undergrad were. And so I kind of diverged from birds really quickly and went straight for ticks, just because they connected human health and wildlife health and ecosystem health in this really unique way, and showed that there's value in understanding and valuing urban, or not urban, sorry, but environmental ecosystem health as well. And my thesis research is mostly based on um, understanding how the environment and changes within the landscape can alter and affect the prevalence of tick-borne pathogens within nature. And so for my project, I'm basically sampling ticks across these 31 sites that you see here. This urban area is St. Louis City. And then as you move more and more west, you get to more rural land uses. And then you have this intermediate zone here. And so I'm sampling ticks from each of these 31 sites and then using CO2 traps, the ticks kind of get stuck onto the tape. So this is just one corner of one tick trap. And the ticks kind of like just get stuck here. And so we take those ticks and we actually analyze them for pathogens. Those tests haven't come back yet, but I'm hopeful that we'll find something that might be different. And I also do wildlife surveys at each of the sites using dung survey samples. And so we're able to estimate the abundance of wildlife at each site. And since deer are such important hosts for ticks, we're able to use deer as kind of a covariate to understand the increase or decrease in host abundance for ticks, which is also another measure for disease risk at each site. And this was the research that I was awarded the 2023 Field Inclusive Research Grant for. And that allowed me to buy myself and my research assistants these cool neon vests that helped us, to go pretty much unnoticed in this weird way at each of the field sites, because these are more urban areas and also more rural areas where there are lots of people, which is really important to look official so that you're not like, stereotyped in anything or anything like that. Yeah, that's basically it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer anything that I maybe skipped over or went by too quickly. But yeah, thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Derek. It's Majo's turn now.
Okay, gonna share my screen. Okay. Let me know if you can see it. Kayla, can you confirm?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity of presenting my work today. I'm really grateful to be able to be part of this community and to share my experience with you guys as well. I'm gonna briefly introduce myself. My name is Maria Jose Navarrete, but I go by Majo, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Integrated Biology at UC Berkeley. Particularly, I work in the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology under the guidance of Professor Rebecca Darwin. Okay, so this is going to be like the outline of my presentation today. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Then I'm going to talk about my journey into academia and herpetology. And then finally, I'm going to share a little bit about my research and the ways that Feel Inclusive has contributed to my work. Okay, so first, in order to begin to tell this story, I have to take you to a virtual trip to this beautiful and small country in the Pacific coast of South America, which is Ecuador. So welcome. This is Ecuador, and this is my homeland. I come from a small town that is located here in the heart of the Andes, embraced by the mountains, the lakes, and the forest. And growing up here, it was inevitable to fall in love with mountains because they not only important ecologically for all of the habitats that they harbor and the diversity that is present there, but also culturally, it is important and it is part of our identity. In our culture, mountains have personalities and they even carry tales of love and even anger. And while I was doing mountain climbing, which is one of my activities that I love outside of academia, I also learned that mountains are the best teachers because they impart lessons of resilience, strength, discipline, but also they teach you how to be more kind to yourself, to be reciprocal, to be grateful, and humble. And those values are also reflected in my grandma. She is my hero, and she is, without knowing, my biggest example of feminism because she worked her entire life to provide our family with opportunity to pursue our dreams because she really believes that education is the most powerful tool to claim our lives and to claim our stories. So because of her, I am here a PhD student, first generation PhD student in the US. Okay, and that's how my journey began, fueled by a very stubborn grandmother, the support of very hardworking parents, and also by the fortune of having the forest as my backyard. Growing up in Ecuador, which is one of the biodiversity hotspots, observation became my primary source of learning, and my inherent curiosity of the natural world developed quickly, inspired by all of the species and the biodiversity that I grew up surrounded by. Later through college, I fell in love with amphibians, which are basically frogs, salamanders, and these weird looking like worms here that I'm holding in this picture called caecilians. And I also gained a lot of experience doing field work. I had the opportunity to visit a lot of regions in Ecuador, which gave me a broad perspective on ecosystems and also taught me to always consider natural history when thinking about more theoretical questions. However, the beginning of my academic career was also marked by encountering my first systemic barriers and systematic barriers and also um, uh, difficulties that were associated to my identity, to my gender. And for example, something that happened is while I was undergrad, I really wanted to join this expedition, this 2-month expedition. But unfortunately, when I applied to it, I received the response that they were not accepting women in the team because it was a burden in a way. Basically, that's what they said. Because on the one hand, women in theory, or like the notion is that women cannot carry very heavy loads as men can do, but also because of menstruation, and that was one of the reasons for why I didn't go to one of these expeditions. But in spite of these negative experiences, I was fortunate enough to find very supportive mentors who opened the door of possibilities for me to develop as a scientist and also as a field biologist. Among them, there is Santiago Ron here. He was my advisor in undergrad, and also Rebecca Tarvin, which is like in this little picture here at the bottom. And I actually met Becca while she was doing fieldwork for her research. And then later she became my PhD advisor for like now. Also, I would like to mention that although there were and still are situations where I'm the only woman in the field, or part of the team that is doing fieldwork, I am very happy to learn that things are changing, and that thanks to the commitment of people that want to create a more inclusive herpetology field. So I'm very happy to see that things are little by little getting better. Also, my journey applying to the US was riddled with challenges because, well, English is not my first language, and I really needed to learn English before applying to the US, and that comes with financial challenges. So I think that a key factor that I am here is because of the support of my undergrad director, PI, because he decided to pay me and other students for our research. And that financial support allowed me to cover my English classes, the GRE and TOEFL exams, and also to cover the application fees of universities. In my first round of applications, I only had money to apply to one university, and that was Berkeley. And unfortunately, I didn't get it the first time. I was devastated by that first rejection, and which was also a process that felt kind of lonely, given the fact that I'm a first generation student and my family didn't really understand what was going on or why I was so sad. But I didn't give up. I saved up money, I tried again, and the next time I made it. And I got accepted at Berkeley, and I started climbing this new mountain that I call PhD. Luckily for me, I've been able to find a very supportive community in Berkeley that I can rely on in the challenging moments. And oh God, that I've needed them. I feel like this picture kind of depicts what my journey in climbing this PhD mountain has looked like. I have had to face the loss of very important people in my life, which completely shaped my world, and I had to learn from how to start from zero and how to keep climbing in spite of grieving. And also, I've been witnessing how my country becomes one of the most dangerous countries in Latin America. And all of that has been happening while I'm here, far away from home, and also while my family is still there. But I also have learned that it is important to seek out the joyful moments that accompany the journey. And I see that as kind of like finding the Sicilian in the mud. So Sicilians are these very enigmatic fossorial amphibians that are very elusive, and they only show themselves when there is heavy, heavy rain and when everything's covered by mud. So I find this as a very fitting analogy for how you can find moments of joy in the unexpected and small aspects of your life. And in case you haven't seen a Sicilian before up close, this is how they look like. Aren't they cute? Okay, and based on my experience and also based on all of the data that it is out there, I think one of the main ways that universities and organizations can support marginalized students is by securing funding to pay for their research. There is this study in 2021 that it is showing how the primary reason for why undergraduate students from underrepresented groups decide not to join internship is because of pay. So the lack of payment is providing or is creating a barrier for students to access these opportunities that can allow them with networking, but also other career experiences that can help them build a very strong CV. This is something that organizations like Feel Inclusive have clear, but unfortunately, universities haven't been doing a great job in providing this funding for especially their undergrads. Okay, So finally, I'm going to tell you about my research, which focuses on the origin and evolution of the acquisition of guanidinium alkaloids in these very, very endangered harlequin toads that are from the genus Atelopus from Ecuador and Colombia. So all of these animals, we all can agree that all of these animals are very distantly related. Their common ancestor is very, very, or lived in a very, very like early part of the history of life on Earth. And interestingly, all of these animals have the exact same chemical defense to deter predators. And this compound is called tetrodotoxin. So tetrodotoxin is a compound that is also part of this group of guanidinium alkaloids. And what they do is they are very potent neurotoxins that blocks the pores of voltage-gated sodium channels. So here you can see that tetrodotoxin is in the middle of the pore where sodium ions should pass through to trigger action potential. So when there is a molecule there blocking the path of sodium ions, what it is happening is that the action potential cannot occur, and that results in paralysis, and in high doses can cause the death of organisms that consume this toxin. Amphibians are very well known for possessing a bunch of chemical defenses, and they have different mechanisms of obtaining these chemical defenses. So one is dietary origin. So there are these poison frogs of the family Dendrobaitidae, and what they do is they sequester the toxins from what they eat. In this case, you can see there are these three compounds that are present in this frog that are also found in all of these genera of ants, showing that the compounds are coming from ants. Another aspect or way of getting toxins is through biosynthesis or endogenous production. And this is where animals are able to produce their own toxins, usually in specialized glands where they can release them as well. So here's what we are seeing in this cane toad. But finally, there is a third unexplored mechanism for how amphibians and other animals as well can obtain their toxins. And this is through the acquisition of symbiotic bacteria that live in their skin and that somehow are producing the toxin for these animals in order to get a place to live and potentially receiving some food, etc. So here, this study is showing how the population from Oregon, that is actually very toxic, has all of these bacteria. And once this group cultured these bacteria, they were able to detect the presence of tetrodotoxin in the media. However, herpetologists are still debating whether the main source of tetrodotoxin is from symbiotic origin or endogenous production. And for that reason, the system that I'm proposing to study, the Atelopus frogs, is a very cool system because it provides independent or like the evolution of multiple instances of the presence of tetrodotoxin across the genus, or potentially it evolved in the ancestor of all the genus, but multiple species have them. So it is feasible to test what is the source of tetrodotoxin in all of those species. However, there has been a bias in the group that has been studied for this, especially in Central American species, whereas the majority of the species of Atelopus are actually present in Colombia and Ecuador. So the peak of diversity is in these two countries. For that reason, I am carrying out fieldwork in Ecuador and Colombia to collect some samples from all of these species of Atelopus. So far, I've been able to collect 49 samples of 11 species, thanks to the help of all of these fieldwork field members that have helped me throughout this process. And I've been obtaining skin tissues from biopsies that are going to be used for or were used already for chemical analysis. And I've also been collecting swabs that I'm going to use for metagenomic sequencing and also bacteria culturing. So this is the results from the chemical analysis, thanks to the collaboration of Professor Mariotsu Yamashita in Japan. And we were able to detect the presence of vanillinium alkaloids in 4 new species from Ecuador. And one of these species not only has tetrodotoxin, but it also has this very enigmatic toxin called kirikitoxin, which is a tetrodotoxin analog. And the interesting aspect of this toxin is that it was considered extinct in nature because the only species that harbors it was already considered also extinct in nature. So there is this concept of toxins that might also be in danger as the species are. And finally, for bacteria culturing and toxin detection, this is like the methodology that I'm going to be using for sample collection, mixed community plates, isolating the strains, and then trying to detect whether tetrodotoxin is present in the media of these isolated strains. Finally, I want to say that fieldwork is a very collaborative effort, and none of the things that I've been able to accomplish would have been possible without the help of all of these people that have supported in one way or another my efforts to collect these samples. And this is one of the main aspects of what I'm doing, because I really want to connect to the local people that get to share the land with the frogs that I'm studying, and to be able to provide them with a way of being reciprocal for the work that they've been doing to contribute to my research. And that's when Field Inclusive played a very important role, because their support allowed me to cover the salary of Don Clever here, which is helping me right now, or here in the picture. He's helping me to build these enclosures to test how animals reacted to the biopsy procedure that I was performing. And also, Don Clever is Doña Amanda's husband, and I was also able to pay her to cook for us. So I'm really grateful for the support that Feel Inclusive gave me to also support the people that are helping me with my work. I hope that makes sense. And I think that's it. Thank you so much, and I'm open to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sofia. I was also a recipient in the summer of 2023 of a Field Inclusive Grant in partnership with the Cape Fear Bird Observatory in Wilmington, North Carolina. I just graduated from Wingate University this December, which is also in North Carolina, near Charlotte area, but doing an environmental biology degree. I am currently and originally from Peru. Right now I'm in Ica, and I'll just show you a little bit of where I am. I'm in the desert of Ica, and I'm not sure if you can see the dunes over there, but I am back home for a month after being for almost 6 years in the US. After I moved in high school from Lima, Peru, to the US, where I noticed, and this is why I went into environmental bio, that there was not as much focus or awareness about the natural world and what is going on behind the scenes in nature as there is here in Peru. Like Majo was saying, in South America, like she's from Ecuador, I'm from Peru, there's this great awareness of what's going on in the natural world, and it's part of our culture, and it's a big part of our identity, taking care of our mountains, of the dunes, like I showed you, of the birds around us. And going into a new country, seeing that there wasn't much of a focus or desire to know what was going on and how we can like help restore and preserve the landscapes that nature has, like really hurt me. So I decided to go into it head on. I applied to many universities in the US, and ended up in Wingate, which was close to where I was living at the moment. And I got to meet some wonderful people over there. And during my junior year, I met Lauren Farr. She's an alumni of Wingate University, where I went to, a very small college in North Carolina, like I said. But over there, she made me realize of like the whole discrepancy in wildlife research, that there's not as many people of color, there's not as much homogeneity in who is doing the research, and this can be like unsafe for us. So this was also a propeller into why I am in wildlife research right now. During the summer of last summer, 2023, I participated in a banding of painted buntings, which are these very colorful blue and green and red and yellow birds that are only on the east coast of the US and Cuba. And most of the research was banding and following them through North Carolina, seeing where they're coming from, because this is a 12-year study at this point. And I was an intern with the Cape Fear Bird Observatory, trying to figure out what patterns of like migration these birds have. And during my last semester of school, I presented on how the density of painted buntings was around the North Carolina coast and what factors are the most influencing. Our results were very inconclusive because we had very high densities of birds in some areas, in some sites, and very low in some, and there was not much difference between these two sites, whilst there were some sites that had everything and didn't have many birds. So, but like this research made me see that even though we didn't find any conclusive results, it's good to like follow what's going on, because these birds are losing their habitat due to rise of sea level and urbanization of coastal areas. So even with like not knowing is a step forward, even if we don't have something conclusive, because we know what else to look for. There's more things that we don't know, and it's always good to discard some things and keep moving forward. Yeah, like I said, I'm from Peru and I just graduated from Wingate University. At this point, I am looking for jobs. I'm an international student, so this can be tough because there's many companies that, because of the restrictions of a visa, they won't let you work for them, or they will like give you a chance. For example, I can't work for any of the U.S. forests or U.S. funded companies or branches of the U.S. government, like the U.S. Forest Service, which I would like to like delve into research. Even though I love birds and I love the research I did past summer, I feel like there is many more things that I still need to discover. And that's why I'm going into the work field, to see what other passions I can have. Because I have a very deep passion about ecosystems. More than a singular species, I want to focus on how things interconnect. And I'm in the process of finding where's my niche that I can focus on. And in the meantime, I am getting to know more of where I am from. I'm right now traveling for Peru for a little bit, just to give myself a break after a long time being away from home, from my family. During the pandemic, I was also in the US, so lost some people over there, over here. And it's nice to reconnect with my hometown, with my home country, and with my loved ones. But yeah, I'm at that point of my life. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's just a little bit about me, about my research, and about where I'm from and my journey. But yes, feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to answer them. But that's me.
All right, hello. I'm about to start my presentation. All right, so hi, I'm Jayshaun Talbert. I'm an undergrad student at Oregon State. I'm actually in Oregon right now, so it is a way earlier than it is on the East, but I'm so excited and honored to be here virtually to talk about my research experiences. And without further ado, I'm gonna get started. So a little bit about me. I am from Columbus, Ohio, and just given that I'm a zoology major, I'm a huge animal lover. Like, and there's this picture of me holding a nice female boa constrictor at a reptile show, not too far from where I grew up. And then I did my senior pictures with an owl. His name was Edison, and I miss him very dearly. And I took care of turtles at a nature center, and I'm going to talk about more about that later. But this is Ziggy. He's an Eastern box turtle, and I miss him very much. And this picture, right next to the one of me holding a snake, is a picture of me and a couple of friends that I made volunteering in Central Oregon with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to sample chronic wasting disease in elk. And I'm also just a huge bird person. Like, I definitely have a species preference for birds compared to other animals. And I'll talk more about that when I talk about research that I am currently doing and will be doing in the future. But outside of career-focused things, I also love hanging out with my friends. This is a picture of me and my friends shortly before I left for college in August. And this logo with the MR is actually the logo for my podcast that I started to just sort of foster my own interest in talking and discussing about my favorite TV shows and like the complex themes in those TV shows. So I guess outside of like animals and research, I'm just kind of a nerd. I didn't put a picture up on this presentation because I didn't have any space, but I also love skateboarding. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. My journey into the field is what I'm going to talk about next. So I started in 2021 volunteering at the Grange Insurance Audubon Center in Columbus, Ohio. It was like 10 minutes from my house. And I started volunteering there in animal care. So I took care of 3 turtles and a cockroach that did pass away. So rest in peace, Hissy. But I mostly took care of 3 turtles. I took care of a common snapping turtle. Her name is Snaps, and she's the photo on the top right. And then I took care of Ziggy, who's an Eastern box turtle, and he's in the top left. I also took care of an alligator snapping turtle named Allie, and she wasn't very photogenic, so I didn't have very good pictures of her. So she unfortunately could not make it into the presentation. But these 3 turtles were sort of my like journey into working with animals directly. I'd always known that I wanted to work with animals. Like when I learned what zoology was when I was in 1st grade, I was like, oh, that's my thing. I have to do that. Like what other option is there? So I started with just volunteering. But then in 2022, I was offered a fellowship through Audubon Great Lakes Wild Indigo Nature Explorations program, which basically was an environmental education opportunity and fellowship where basically I'd be an environmental educator for marginalized communities within the inner city of Columbus. And that, while it was an environmental education internship or fellowship, I guess, I also got exposed to my first research opportunities. And that started with transect surveys around the like metro park with that was surrounding the nature center that I worked at. So I co-planned migratory transect surveys in the fall of 2022, and the picture on the bottom left is actually near the end of one of my transect surveys. This was this was on the peninsula. Because that one of the transect surveys went like about 1.5 miles off trail. And it ended right with these beautiful mud flats that, since these transect surveys were done so early in the morning, I could see the sunrise by the time I had gotten to this site, and it was really beautiful. And I also got to track migratory bird movement through central Ohio through these transect surveys. Another thing that I was able to do in tandem with this was my own research project under the supervision of the director of boreal conservation at Audubon Americas. So what I did is I made, well, I didn't make the recording unit, but I programmed it. I was sent an AudioMoth autonomous recording unit, and my goal was to program it, figure out how it works, and then deploy it on the roof of the nature center I worked at to gauge how many migrating birds that breed in the boreal use central Ohio as a like route or stopover point during their migration. And so really was a really good study, and I do actually still have that data, but because processing those files, because they're chip calls, because these would be recorded at night, and a lot of bird flight calls change at night versus the day, and a lot of people don't know that. I learned that doing this research and sorting through my files, because you can't just use Merlin or like other bird ID apps to figure out what they're saying. You have to like code a program called Vesper in order to do that, and because of the staffing and other responsibilities at the nature center and in my current position, I was not able to process the data, but I intend to process the data at some point in grad school eventually, so that I can fully know what this first research project was. But I did send a few files over to my PI, and he said that I did have good data in there. I just needed to process it all, and that's like 4 months worth of audio files. So at some point I'm going to process it, but right now I've kind of got my toes in other things. So I'll tell you guys about that later, but I'm going to skip to the summer of 2023, and that was where I spent my summer in Maine working for the Audubon Seabird Institute. And I was able to get that job because I networked with a couple people within Audubon because of that fellowship that I did. And I spent a little over a week on this research island in Maine studying seabirds. I studied puffins, 3 different species of terns. Like the one on my head is a common tern that nested right near our little cabin that we did data entry out and kind of lived out of. We slept in these little tents that you can see in the background of my picture. And you can see a little bit of the tern poop on my shirt and on my hat. That's just kind of the thing you have to get used to when you lived on the island. So I did that. I performed productivity checks. I performed band reciting and just population surveys and all sorts of fun research when I was on the island. And then I came off of the island and I did education. So I led seabird tours to come out to this island. And that's just kind of my before, what got me into the field. And where I am now is I've kind of got my hands in a little bit of everything right now. So my current research interests involve starting a bird window strike initiative called Lights Out. It's a pretty like widespread program across the US, started by National Audubon, and I'm bringing it to Corvallis, Oregon, particularly Oregon State University's campus, since a lot of the newer buildings are largely made up of windows. And I've talked to a few people, and I know that during migration, a lot of birds die because of colliding with these windows. So I want to And what I'm planning on doing is coordinating surveys in the mornings to collect these birds and store them and take data from them. And if there are injured birds that are around, we will get them shipped to a wildlife hospital about 10 minutes from campus so that we can, rehabilitate these birds and hopefully get them back on their migration journey. And that's starting in March. I'm also doing a herpetology population study since I love reptiles and amphibians. That's going to be starting also in March. I have me and the other research coordinator in the herpetology club here at OSU have boards placed on campus where we think that a lot of herps are gonna end up hanging out near the spring when everyone starts coming out of brumation. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take just basic data, so species, number of species, and sex of those species at these sites once a month. So over the course of from March to June, we will be taking numbers and getting a decent estimate about, all right, this amount of herps hang out at this section of campus. And this is something that me and a professor are actually working on, is maybe doing a kestrel population study of American kestrels near campus and just in Corvallis in general, since kestrels are super common, but their populations are declining around overall just in the US. And the breeding, we're curious about the breeding numbers of American kestrels in the Willamette Valley, which is where Corvallis is and the surrounding areas. So I'm gonna be doing that actually here soon. I have a meeting later today to discuss building nest boxes for the grad student for this study. And that's not right now, but another study that I'm also doing is a captive raptor stimulation study. So I'm going to be looking at captive raised raptors that have never seen the wild and that were raised exclusively in captivity. And we're going to look at how they respond to stimuli that they normally see in the wild, particularly in snakes. So what the professor and I that I'm working with, his name is David Kikuchi. He's an amazing research advisor. What we want to know is if raptors can recognize venomous snakes versus non-venomous snakes by pattern, in if that's a learned trait that they have to learn in the wild, or if it's just instinctual. And if it is instinctual, then these captive raised birds would have adverse and sort of fearful, or at the very least uncomfortable reactions to these 3D models of coral snakes and other venomous snakes that would interact with their natural environment. So I actually just we're gonna start with Harris's hawks. We're gonna start doing that work with Harris's hawks here soon. I've got a falconer that's interested in being a part of the study. And in the future, hopefully by this coming fall, I hope to start a solid migration study. Because there is a alleged breeding population of saw-whets near OSU. And I want to see if they're all residents or migrants, because in Oregon, there's a little bit of overlap between saw-whet owls that are residents and don't migrate versus ones that do, because there's a lot more activity during spring and fall migration. So I hope to talk to a few people and start that study in the fall. That's all of the research I'm currently doing right now. So I've got my hands full, I guess. And how Field Inclusive helped me with my research is I was awarded a $2,000 travel grant to go to La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm actually kind of repping that right now. I was awarded this money to go to this international owl conference. I got to meet owl researchers from around the world, from Norway, from Brazil, from Paraguay, from all over. I got to learn all about owl research being done all over the world. I got to meet some incredibly well-known owl researchers. Since owls are kind of my thing, I love them and I cannot wait to study them in the future. And going to this conference really gave me a chance to network with all of these owl researchers and get some tips and just get connected with them. I had a lot of fun conversation, especially with Denver Holt, who's in this picture with me, and he's kind of like my hero. So getting to spend time with him over the course of that week, asking questions about his life, his research, and then he asked about questions about me and how I got into this. So I just made a lot of connections. So now I know, hey, I have allies and colleagues from around the world that I can seek out and reach out to if I have questions about any studies. And it was amazing because I would not have been able to go to this OWL conference without Field Inclusive's help, because I am an out-of-state student here at Oregon State, and that is not cheap. And especially since I'm largely paying for all of this myself. So scholarships and grants and just like working during the school year, like I'm gonna go to work right after this presentation. So like without Field Inclusive's wonderful help, I would not have been able to go to this the World Owl Conference, and I would not have been able to network with all of these wonderful owl researchers there. And I also have like a bunch of stories from it. I love talking to my friends about it. It was a wonderful experience. But recommendations of how organizations can support marginalized communities and underrepresented communities in the natural sciences. I would say that universities and organizations should have like more student support programs like LSAMP. I know Derek mentioned it. I'm also a part of LSAMP at OSU. It's actually one of the big reasons I came to OSU is because I knew that they had programs for underrepresented communities in the sciences. So student support programs like that, and then program and fellowship opportunities like the National Needs Fellowship at North Carolina State, and the other fellowship opportunity that Derek mentioned. So universities and organizations can have more programs dedicated towards getting more diversity in the field research and field biology and natural science fields. Another way that can be supported is through clubs like Manners. I'm a part of Manners, which stands for Minorities in Agricultural and Natural Science. Agricultural and okay, it's a little tired. I'm a little tired. So it's basically a club for minorities in agriculture, natural resources, and other related sciences. And we get a lot of internship opportunities, lots of networking. They do a national conference every year. I unfortunately will not be going because I'm going to another conference right around that time, but I hope to go next year. And we hold a lot of professional development opportunities both on campus with our like Oregon State chapter, and also we get to attend webinars and meetings with the national chapter, so we get to interact with people from all over the country that just share the same field as us. And that club is basically nationwide, and other clubs like that are great resources for internships and just representation, because it's good to be around people that look like you that are in the same field as you, so you guys can compare resources and maybe build off of each other. So that is the end of my presentation. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A section. I'd be happy to answer them. And that is it from me.
All right, well, these were all wonderful presentations by our panelists. I would like to thank them once again for sharing their experiences. And now I would like to invite all of our panelists to turn their cameras back on as we open it up to our audience by taking some time, or some of their questions already placed in the Q&A chat. I know we run a little bit over time, so we're just gonna get a couple of questions in. Hopefully you all can stick around just for a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. So for any panelists, what, if any, are some positive changes you have seen toward increasing diversity in the field since you started your work? And this is for anybody who wants to answer.
So this is weird, but I feel like us being present in the field is the difference. Being able to participate, to be part of like the change is making a difference. And in my experience, it was a very welcoming and like insightful. I learned a lot and I grew a lot, but also I saw that people would like see me as like representing not only women, but also like people of color and Hispanic.
Thank you for sharing, Sophia. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that one?
Yeah, I'd say I think just in my experience with the communities that I've like kind of interacted with, I think a lot of people are trying to become more culturally competent, especially after 2020 and everything. People are doing like land grant acknowledgements and doing surveys of their demographics and understanding where and how they can affect systematic change, especially through recruiting students of color. And more of these programs are popping up, like me and Jayshaun mentioned, that are like targeting minority students and helping them gain access to graduate school and research.
Thank you, Derek. Anyone else?
Yeah, I
Okay.
would like to add something. Yeah, I think something that I've noticed too is that it's not only like inviting more people from minoritized groups, but also making feel more safer for them. So that is also something that I've noticed that is a change that has been happening, being more conscious about the risks that minoritized groups can suffer in the field. So just acknowledging that and being proactive about it has been a very big change that I've seen.
Thank you, Majo. All right, and if no one has anything else, I'll move on to the next question. Okay. So this question is for anyone who wants to answer. Any advice for climbing the ladder as a marginalized student, such as applying to internships, feeling belong, or feeling belong in the sense, or etc.?
I like to answer this question, and my advice is just to get involved, get out there. That's what I did. I got involved with working with animals, and which eventually led to my research by just I Googling like a nature centers near me and getting involved, networking a lot. I would not have been able to even do my first research without networking, and that is a tool that I use every single day. So I'll be very conscious of making a good impression and just being super friendly and super nice to everyone, because at the end of the day, they're going to remember you by what you like, your first impression of them and you being around them. They're going to remember that, because that's going to be one of the few interactions you have with someone that, that's on like a bit. If you see like head exec, for example, you want to make a good first impression because they're going to remember you by that impression. So when the time comes and you need a resource, you can reach out to them. That and just getting it, like really immersing yourself in the field and just doing as much as you can. And because anything can lead to anything. Like, I'm not really much of a chronic wasting disease person, but I did it because it was a chance to interact with state government faculty, which can lead to an internship down the line for me. So just really not saying no to anything. Well, say no to some things with reason, but trying to have an open mind with the positions that you take, and really, like, I'm gonna really stress this, network, because that is how you get in. That's how I did every single thing that I listed. I networked. So that's it.
Thank you, Jayshaun. Does anyone else have anything to add?
To add on that, tell your story. Yes, network, but people want to know who you are, and your story is gonna be impactful because every one of us is unique and has something going on in their life that makes you special. So tell people your story so that they know who you are and what you've gone through, and they'll want to know you more. They'll want to know what you're doing, and in networking, you'll meet the people that will get you to the places that you want to be.
Thank you, Sophia. Anyone else? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question. All right, so what advice can you, if any of the panelists, give to people to help foster a more inclusive space? And it's a similar question to maybe the first one.
I would say first, oh, sorry, please, Majo, please.
Okay. Okay. I would say that a big part, at least in my opinion, is that just listen and don't assume. There have been so many times that I've been told things of like, oh, your no, or like your experience is not what it is, or kind of like just assuming that something that it is gonna be easy for me, that it is not necessarily true because of all of the aspects of being an international student, or just the simple fact that when I enter, for instance, the US, people don't receive me saying welcome home. So I have to go through some barriers when I enter the US. And people assume like, oh, it's gonna be easy for her to do this, when it is not the case. So I think a big part of making a space to like feel people that they belong is just listen to them and don't assume their stories.
Thank you for sharing, Majo. Does anyone else have anything to share?
I would just like to amplify exactly what she said. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Talk to people and address their problems specifically. And the only way you understand what their problems are is if you get it straight from the source.
Thank you, Derek. All right, I have one question left for all of you, just to wrap us up. So what is some advice you all would give to upcoming students who would like to be in your position?
Reconsider. No, I'm joking. I mean, grad school is not for the faint of heart. And now that I'm nearing the end of my grad school journey, I would say that I'm glad I did it. It definitely helped me become the person that I am, and I'm stronger because of it. Just, talk to people who are in the exact situation you're in. Talk to the grad students at the institution that you're applying to, so that you understand their unique position, because it can be different from one institution and one department to the next. And so network, like Jayshaun said, network is how I got into my current lab. My undergrad mentor knew my current grad school mentor. And so nice people know nice people. So if you have like a great experience in undergrad, you want to talk to those people and ask them, do they know any colleagues who are accepting students for grad school? Because again, nice people know who the nice people are, especially if they're in the same field. They know the PIs to avoid at all costs, because there are some problematic people out there, especially as underrepresented students, Black and brown people. We cannot afford to be, fill in the blank.
Thank you, Derek. Does anyone else have anything to share?
Yes. Oh, or you want to?
Oh, go.
Okay. I was gonna say, get acquainted with your surroundings, try as many things as you can, even if you're not comfortable, get out of your comfort zone, even if you think you won't belong, or even if you don't think you like it, get into it. Maybe you'll meet the right person, maybe you'll find a new passion that you didn't know you have, and enjoy the journey in trying those new things. Because even if you found something you didn't like, now you know that, then you can move on. And that's how you're gonna meet people, find new things you like, and also like see like put some value into your life, put more things into your story, and enjoy the journey, because we know it's like it's a tough ladder to climb, but you might as well enjoy the view while you're at it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to add, like, don't give up, because failure is also a very like part of this process. You're gonna be failing all the time. I don't know how many grants I've submitted that I got rejected, but I got this one and I am here now. So it's just like a matter of keep trying and yeah, don't giving up.
Thank you, Mom.
I want to add on to what Majo said, because yeah, like rejection is I see it as like redirection, that like, oh, if I got rejected from a grant or this internship, then I guess it just wasn't supposed to happen. Like, not at the very least not right now. So just like taking the sort of setbacks in stride and remembering that, like, if it was going to if it was supposed to happen, it would have happened. So not really focusing on the losses and trying to find using it as an opportunity to branch out. Like what Sofia said, like, get out of your comfort zone, do things that you're not really sure that you're gonna like. I mean, I'm gonna keep mentioning this, but I wasn't super sure that I would like sampling for chronic wasting disease, because I had never done something that gory before. But I learned that, one, I can take gore pretty well. And that I really liked like working with deer. And I met some people that can make that happen again. So just like never write off something just because, oh, well, I only want to work with this species. I only want to do this kind of work, because the wildlife field is kind of small and a lot of people talk. So like, even if you do something that's like, oh, I'm not super interested in this, that person, like your boss in that position, might know someone who can get you where you want. So it's just like meeting a lot of people, and don't try not to burn any bridges. Obviously there are instances where like some bridges just need to burn, but try and keep that network, because a job reference can go a long way.
Thank you, Jayshaun. Thank you all for sharing. All right. Well, we're out of time today, so on behalf of Field Inclusive, I would like to thank Derek, Majo, Sofia, and Jayshaun for joining us today. And we thank you for the work that you are doing and continue to do when it comes to being an inspiration to others in the nature science field, and for sharing your experiences. Again, we thank those of you who joined us today. We will continue these conversations as we further our initiatives and work when it comes to amplifying social field safety issues, as well as amplifying minorities in STEM. Please be sure to follow and interact with us on all of our social media channels, including Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, at the handle @FieldInclusive. You can find that in the chat. Please also be sure to visit our website to learn more about our organization and ways that you as an individual or organization can support us. Be sure to check out the rest of our virtual Field Inclusive Week events, and be sure you are following us on social media to hear about and enter our daily giveaways and other fun social media challenges. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, we will hear from Taylor Saucier, freshwater fisheries biologist and a master's student at the University of Arizona, who will discuss the topic of turning failed experiments into useful data. We hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.